getting back to the carnival, Seán, how long did it last? Like when I say that, what I mean is,
Well, it lasted way into the end of the 60s, I think.
Yeah.
It might have went into the 70s, I don't
Right.
know. It ended up in the hall.
Right.
You see, the bands got so demanding for money.
You mean greedy now?
Greedy.
Right.
We had the Clipper Carton and top bass melody aces and all those bands for £30.
Yeah, there was a Jimmy McGlinchey from Donegal, who remember, you know.
You had some of the great bands.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
And then they started, and it ended up that they had to get a guarantee of £200 or 60-40 of the takings, whichever was. So it got to the stage where you were actually running it for the band.
I remember at a certain stage in the late 60s, Peter Sherry, I think, was the chairman.
Right. That's right.
And secretary was
Jeannie McCaig.
And I know that the takings, or let's say the fundraising that went on that time, it went into the building of the dressing rooms there.
That's right. That's true. That's true. And it was actually run in the hall then. Paddy Maguire, I think, was chairman at the time, and he continued the carnival in the hall, but it wouldn't have been a great success, you know.
Well, Shawnee, it's quite obvious from the way you're talking that you have a great fondness for the early days in the parish. And I remember talking to you before, Shawnee, and you mentioned good juvenile teams, and I know when I was talking to you that you were referring to I think it was the Knockatallon situation at the end of the 50s and that.
Yes, that's right. Knockatallon were the team that were catering for juvenile football, minor football,
right, and under 16s and
under 16s and all.
And
they sort of slipped up, I think, around that 1950, 58. We took over the under 14 team.
Right.
And we were successful with the under 14 juvenile team.
Right.
We won the cup.
Shawnee, you talked about emigration and Knockatallon, let's say, being in trouble, and Tidagh, getting difficulty in sort of fielding the team, and even Scotstown themselves, in fact, were having a problem.
Yeah.
So I think I have an idea what you're coming at there now. You'd be talking about when they came together.
In 62, Knockatallon came with abandoned in 62,
right?
Because they weren't fit to.
But you had Prunchas McKenna and Only Connolly. They were on the.
But they went back to Knockatallon. After playing for Scotstown in 1960, they went back to play with Knockatallon.
And why did they get playing with Scotstown if they were with Knockatallon?
Well, they got playing Scotstown as sort of a Seamus McElroy from Latin.
Right.
Had been granted permission to play for Castleblayney.
Oh, right, okay.
Now, whether it was legal or not, we got the assistance of Only Connolly and Prunchas. They already started to work in Cherry's factory.
And what about Hughie Connolly, because he was a very good footballer, wasn't he?
Connolly wasn't about that time now,
Where
as far as I can remember. I don't know now.
Yeah.
But we were looking for other players who weren't too willing to come at the time.
All right, but we
got those two
very young players.
They were working in Cherry's factory at that time.
All right.
They were really the first employees that Cherry's had there.
Now, we went over this before, and you mentioned Sherry's factory.
I'd say that I would like to mention it again, because Sherry's factory had a big say in the teams that came later.
Right.
We had Jerry McCarville, Gene Sherry, half the Scotstown team were working in Sherry's factory.
Ray McCarn, he was there too.
Ray McCarn, actually you could name them all. And that and the joining of the parish give us a great...
There was one, I think there was one occasion I remember seeing a team photograph, and I have a notion there was someone like maybe up on 10 from the factory playing, on the Scotstown team.
That would be right.
But getting back to the parish coming together, Shawnee.
Yes. Well, the parish, 1962, Knockatallon were getting it difficult to field a team too. And Jimmy Sherry and myself decided that we'd...
Which Jimmy is that
Jimmy
now?
over here.
Because there was another...
Jimmy.
But there was a Jimmy at Drumhillock as well,
it was a wee Jimmy and myself.
But Jimmy, he was in the factory was going at that stage.
It was, but we decided that we'd go down and meet the Knockatallon club and try and get the parish united, because everybody was struggling at the time. The three teams, not the three teams, the Dublin had already joined with us.
So who did you meet?
So we met Johnny Corr, Benny Maguire, John Connolly of Hill, Gallagher,
Jimmy
Gallagher,
yeah.
and I think there might have been one or two others.
Yeah.
And in fact, we met in the pay box. How we all fitted into it, I don't know, in Killicarn Hall.
So you had no idea how many meetings you had?
We had one meeting.
Just the one meeting?
One meeting, and we put it to them, and they said they'd decide one way or another.
Right.
And Johnny Corr was very much in favour of...
Johnny, he was a postman, isn't that right?
He was a postman. It was quite friendly with him at the time,
but
you know.
I
used to meet him at county board
You worked
meetings.
in the post office too?
I worked in the post office too. And
so you could nearly credit the post office on post for getting you together, post and telegraph.
You could say that.
Yeah.
But Johnny was the county board delegate there too, and I used to meet him at county board meetings, and we'd have chats, and we're good friends.
Yeah.
And Johnny could see the end of the road.
I know, the wisdom of it.
Aye, the wisdom of it.
Again, Seán, I was thinking, because we talked to this back a few years ago.
Yeah.
You mentioned something about Seán Morgan around that time, didn't you?
Well, Seán Morgan and Jimmy, I think it was Jimmy Gunn.
Right.
Had packed their cases to go to England. That was around 63, I'd say. And I came home.
Jimmy going to be a first cousin, or
first cousin.
First cousin. I think he's a cousin.
Seán had been working on the Scotstown bus, and he'd been working in Rooney's of Dublin Street.
Oh yeah.
And he decided to go to England because everybody was emigrating at that time. And I came home from work, and my father was standing at the gate of the house.
No.
No, just at the road.
Down at the gate.
And he says, Seán Morgan's going to England in the morning. And I immediately got in touch with Jimmy here, Jimmy Sherry, and we went out to Morgan's. And Jimmy offered him a job in the factory. And Seán Morgan left his case behind him and came to work in the factory. And he worked out that Seán Morgan was one of the leading lights of the club down through
I was going to ask you, Jimmy, was he interested in Seán Morgan as a worker, or was he interested in him as a footballer?
As a footballer.
As a footballer.
he hadn't really known his capabilities as a worker.
Why I'm saying that is because I know that Seán Morgan, in fact, would have climbed to a high position in the factory.
That's true.
You know?
He proved his worth, like he was well worth keeping, both for the football club and for the